All right, everybody, this is your reading lesson for Tuesday, April 7th. You will need to go to your assignment doc and click here to pull up your lesson page, which should look like this. It says, "What makes a story a story?" So remember that over the next couple of weeks, we're going to be exploring and talking about the differences between texts that are written for a play or drama, texts that are written as a story, and then texts that are written in the form of poetry. We need to be able to use some vocabulary words to describe these texts, and we need to be able to explain how these texts are structured or how they're set up. Okay, so yesterday we talked about drama or plays, and we talked about how they were written for the purpose of being performed. So the way that a script or a play is set up is for the purpose of the people who are performing it. So today we're going to be talking about what makes a story, which should be pretty simple because we've been talking about this basically since you were a reader. So I'm going to start up here at the top and read kind of this introduction sentence up here. It says, "Stories have paragraphs and chapters. They include descriptions of characters, setting, a problem to be solved, and events." So I'm going to stop there and talk first about paragraphs. So I still have a lot of friends who are a little bit unsure how you can tell where a paragraph is. So remember, we can tell where a paragraph is by looking for this indent space, okay? An indent is an extra little space at the very beginning of a paragraph. That little space is a signal to the reader that we're starting a new section of text. So usually you start a new paragraph when maybe the setting changes or when the topic of what is happening in the story changes, and you can tell that you're switching paragraphs by this little space. Sometimes you can also tell they will have an extra double space. Like right here, after it says read the paragraph, see how there's this empty space? Sometimes that can be a signal that there's a new paragraph starting as well. So paragraphs are just a way to group together similar ideas in a story or similar parts of a story. So yesterday with drama, we didn't have paragraphs. The lines were separated, or the text was separated into lines based on who was supposed to be talking. Well, in a regular story, we don't just separate it by who's talking. We kind of group sentences together based on what's happening in the story. Okay, so that's what paragraphs are. This little story is just one paragraph so far. It's actually just the beginning of Red Riding Hood. Chapters, I'm pretty sure all my friends know what chapters are. So that's where we group together sections of the story into smaller chunks. Okay. So usually you won't have chapters in a play. In a play, it's divided into scenes or acts based on the setting of the play. So with stories, it's a little bit different. They're grouped together in chapters based on the events of the story and what's happening. It also says they include descriptions of characters, the setting. So in a play yesterday, we read about how the characters and setting are at the very beginning of the play so that the people who are performing the play can know where they are and who's in the play before they even start and get ready. Well, in a regular story, you just have to read until you find out about the characters and the setting. So remember that the characters are who the story is about, and the setting is when and where the story takes place. Then it says a problem to be solved and events. So almost every story you will read is going to have some kind of problem. Sometimes you might see the word conflict being used, and a conflict is the same thing as a problem. It's, what's going wrong? What is somebody struggling with? And then, of course, events are just the important things that happen in a text. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and read the paragraph. It says, "Once upon a time, there lived a little girl named Red Riding Hood. One day, she decided to visit her grandmother, who lived in the deep, dark woods. She packed a picnic basket full of her grandmother's favorite foods and got ready to leave. Be careful, warned her mother. The forest is a scary place. Beware of animals and other dangers. Little Red Riding Hood said she would be careful and set out on her journey. The deep, dark woods were deep and dark indeed. Soon, Little Red Riding Hood was hidden inside the thick trees. Okay, so let's think about this little beginning of the story and think about the parts of a story that we're supposed to see. We definitely see a paragraph right here, and I can tell because of the extra space, the indent at the beginning. There are characters in this story. We heard about Little Red Riding Hood, and then Little Red Riding Hood was also talking to her mom, and then we also heard about her grandmother. So that's who our story is going to be about. The setting is at her house at first, and then moving into the deep, dark woods. The problem or conflict in this story is so far is that the woods are deep and dark and kind of scary. So that's going to be her problem, and she's all by herself. So far, the main event in this story is just her getting ready to go to her grandmother's house and then going into the woods. So let's go down here to the bottom. So it says different parts of the story. So these are all the parts that a story should have. And then this side says, what do these parts tell you about stories? Okay, so it says, who is telling the story? Well, the part that tells about the story are characters. Okay, or wait, sorry. Who is telling the story? That could be a character or a narrator. So characters or a narrator tell their view of the story. So it's important to think about who is telling the story because you might be getting someone's side of the story. So this story is told by a narrator, and I can tell because it uses words like she and talks about Little Red Riding Hood using her name. So I can tell she's not telling the story. So that means we're getting the narrator's view of the story, which is usually they kind of see all parts of things. And then but if a character was telling the story, then we'd have to be careful because they might only be giving us their side of the story, and that can change how things are told. Who are the characters? Well, that's obviously who the whole story is about. So the characters tell you who the story is about. Characters are who the story is about. Okay, so it gives you the main people in the story or the main, could be even animals. What is the setting? The setting tells where and when the story is taking place. So it's important to know so you can imagine in your head as you're reading where these people are and what, like if it's set in the past, you're going to need to focus on that too. What is the problem or conflict? So this tells us the problem tells what is wrong in the story or what somebody is struggling against. Okay, so these are the main parts of a story. You're going to want to keep this pulled up as you go into your independent assignment for today. And remember, if you need any help reading, you can click on the video link that's underneath our assignment page and listen to Miss Tabor read it for you out loud. Email me if you need help. Love you, miss you, and